What's up, everybody? I'm Jason, and welcome back to the vlog. This is the vlog for Friday, the 12th of November, 2021, and this one's going to be a really short one. So, first of all, I had a number of very interesting discussions that were quite enjoyable and quite informative and quite nice, actually, with a number of commenters in the comments of the last two vlogs I did on the Nikon Z9. So if you were one of those people who I was interacting with, and you were one of those people, lovely people, who were able to remain civil and articulate points and discussions based on your experiences or your understanding of things, and not just resort to calling people names and insulting them, I want to just say thank you. That was a wonderful experience that, different dissenting opinions are always nice to hear from, especially when they're from people who are talking about why something is an important feature for them. That's a completely different thing from what I would expect or want or use. It's always nice to have that kind of information because, well, quite honestly, one of the problems us people, humans, have is that we become biased in our belief that everybody else sees the world the way we do. And so when people can articulate a position that where they see the world a different way, and they can do it eloquently and without having to be insulting or without just simply being so threatened in their position because somebody says something that differs from what they believe, that they have to lash out and call people names, well, thank you for being part of humanity. And thank you for commenting on this channel. So that was the first part of what I wanted to talk through. This is going to be really short because the second thing I want to talk about is I'm posing a question. So if you're one of the people who regularly watch these videos and you're a regular subscriber to my channel, I have been doing, obviously, a whole series on the EOS R5. And I have gotten to a couple of points where the video that I want to do and talk about, I can or don't have to look at power consumption in a very accurate and specific manner. So I have at least one, if not two videos coming up. One of them is going to be looking at the GPS using Bluetooth and a smartphone and how that works with respect to power consumption. And the other video I have in my list of potential videos, but the thought process now has slipped my mind. Oh, the other one is with respect to drive modes. So, and I'm going to talk about each of these and what I'm thinking about or interested in, and I'm going to put this out in the comments. Now, I'm not necessarily going to not do more work on this if I find myself extremely interested in wanting to do more work. So if you say, no, we don't care, don't bother, I may still bother because I'm interested in it. If there's enough that support saying, yes, please do this, we would like to know, then I'm probably not going to not do it because it's not, to save the work. So something like that. Anyway, so with respect to the GPS and geotagging using the smartphone app, I have two thoughts on how to potentially test this with respect for power consumption. So one thought follows the camera industry product association kind of thought process for how they do battery life testing for number of shots, which is I'm going to do an hour-long test. I'm going to have the camera take a picture every minute, roughly, is what I was thinking. Thinking of would be a good, reasonable standard. So the camera will take a picture every minute. It would go to sleep in between the time that the camera was not doing, the in-between pictures. So I put the camera like in eco mode, which puts it to sleep very quickly after it takes a picture. So it would wake up, take a picture, go to sleep, wait a minute, wake up, take a picture, go to sleep, etc. And the thought process behind this is, well, it's easy. I don't have to pull out a microcontroller. I don't have to write any custom code. I don't have to go through hoops and things and whatevers. And It's repeatable because anybody with a timer controller or, or a timer remote for the camera can have the camera do this, so somebody else could test it and verify that they see the results. I will obviously be publishing, as much of the camera configuration as I can, as I think is relevant power-wise at least. So, image stabilization off, autofocus off. Like I'm trying to knock down the power consuming factors to just look at like what the GPS is using. In fact, I was going to shoot this using the electronic shutter because first, I don't care about image quality. And second, if I'm going to put a couple hundred frames on the camera in terms of test exposures, I'd rather not put the wear on the mechanical shutter, even though it's rated for 500,000 exposures. But I just don't see the point in doing it for this kind of test. Because the question is not how many times can the mechanical shutter, or how much battery draw does the mechanical shutter make? The question is how much draw does the GPS impart using, or the Bluetooth geotagging impart both on my smartphone and on the camera. So that's one option, is to wake the camera up, do the shot, let the camera go to sleep, etc. The second option is to pull out a microcontroller, write some code, and then test it in something that's more representative of how I would shoot if I was shooting in practice. So a few dozen images in the course of a minute and then not use it at all for 10 minutes, and then a few dozen images in the course of a minute and then not use it at all for 10 minutes, and kind of repeat that for an hour. Now, my thinking in the difference or the choice here comes down to basically this. My experience when shooting in sort of a continuous drive type operation is that the camera gets way more exposures per battery than it does if it's constantly waking up and going to sleep and going through power cycles and all of this. So I shot an air show ages ago with a 1D Mark III, and I managed something like 4,500 exposures on about 60% of one battery. That's a pretty significant difference compared to just shooting around the studio with it and not having it in 10 frame per second continuous drive mode. I'd maybe get 1,000 or 500 or something like that exposures on a battery. So there can be benefit, or well, certainly from a battery life perspective, there's benefits, or there's a different power consumption profile for shooting in continuous in bursts and versus just shooting one image every X amount of time. So I'm not sure which way I want to or would want to go with that. A third option actually kind of involves doing something that I'm looking at doing for the other question, which is one of the commenters on the second Z9 video I did pointed out incorrectly, but pointed out that in continuous high plus, when using the mechanical shutter, the battery has to be charged to 60% capacity or higher for you to get the full 12 frames per second. And this is something I never actually really thought about a lot when I was, reading the specs and looking at the camera, but I started thinking about it when it was pointed out in that context, which is there's a number of things in the continuous high limitations that Canon publishes or advertises that are very clearly products, to me at least, look very clearly to be products of power consumption. So as an aside, the 60% or higher battery life thing doesn't actually apply to 20 frame per second shooting. 20 frame per second shooting is fully electronic. It doesn't involve the mechanical shutter, and actually ends up being lower power, or should be lower power, than shooting with the mechanical shutter, because the mechanical shutter is just held open and that's it. But I started thinking about wanting to validate this, so the problem here is that when you put a load on a battery, the voltage sags. And if the voltage sags too much, you have one of two things can happen. So one thing is You have in the power regulation for the camera, there is a safety cutoff, if you will, that says if the voltage goes below this, the camera can't run properly. There's only enough, usually there'd be like only enough power left to write out the card and close the shutter or do something to put the camera in a safe power off state. So, and by safe power off, I mean not even necessarily right to the internal flash, but like not damage something by stopping the shutter mid-travel or something like that. Or potentially. I mean, potentially that's not even the case. There's just a low power and it cuts off the camera to protect the circuitry and the battery from that condition. So it's entirely possible. So that's one extreme. The other extreme, of course, is that as you draw down a battery, voltage sags, current, the ability of it to provide current also is limited or decreases. And broadly speaking, for something like a motor driving a shutter, that motor may not be able to drive the shutter as fast, or it may require more time to charge up a capacitor to smooth it out, or something to that effect. A lower voltage could have the motor running slightly slower, or the inability to provide current could have this. So I wanted to look into this because, like I said, the temperature, operating at room temperature, well, running lithium-ion batteries at low temperatures reduces, I mean, that could just be this is what we tested it at, so this is what we're guaranteeing. It could also be that, running batteries, like you see this constantly in the specs, at lower temperatures, you get fewer shots per battery. Well, at lower temperatures, the batteries are less efficient. The batteries have less ability to provide power, and therefore something that draws more power or a lot of power is going to have to be limited in some way, shape, or form. The same thing goes with capacity. If the battery capacity is not high enough to provide the full current and power requirements for everything happening, then the battery capacity or the system may have to limit or reduce things to deal with that. So what I've been thinking about doing is buying the equipment necessary to put a dummy battery in the camera and actually look at power consumption. So being able to turn features on and off and seeing what power the camera draws, being able to shoot in continuous high, seeing what power the camera draws, electronic, see how power the camera draws, and so forth. So this is something I've never actually seen anybody else test. I'm not wedded to the idea of testing it. I think it would be very interesting, but on the same token, as a photographer, it also is completely meaningless to me. It's one of these great things that you could make an argument with on the internet, on YouTube, or something like that, or in the comments, but going out and taking pictures, knowing how much power the autofocus system draws just doesn't change anything. It's not going to stop me from using the autofocus system. It's not going to stop me from shooting. It's not going to, you know what I'm saying? So I'm throwing this out there as does this interest anybody? And this is also something that I can also, with the equipment to do that, I can go back and revisit what I just talked about, the Bluetooth capabilities, looking at it from a power draw consumption instead of looking at it by trying to figure that out by looking at battery life or battery percent consumed. So what I was planning on doing was measuring, was looking at what my battery states were, noting that down, running the test, noting the battery states down, and then making some rough comparisons and estimates of power consumption based on the battery percentages or changes in battery state. However, with a power meter on a dummy battery, I basically can see how much power the camera's drawing if I turn the Bluetooth on, if I turn the Bluetooth off, etc. So I'm throwing this out there again. If this sounds like something that might be interesting to you from I just want to know perspective, because it's, like I said, not something that's inherently interesting from it's going to change what I do in the field, or it's going to stop me from shooting with the camera perspective, then let me know in the comments, and I will take that take comments on both of these power-related things. I will take those into consideration with what I'm planning to do with these videos. Now, if you're watching this video, I should have said this at the beginning, if you're watching this vlog in 2022 or December of 2021 or something like that, I've probably already made my decision and shot these videos. So commenting it in down the road is not going to be helpful for anything. That's time, and this is one of those things that's weird about YouTube in a sense, because, you know, we have videos sometimes aren't time sensitive or time-oriented content, and then we have other videos that are time-oriented. So yeah, whatever. It's weird. But anyway, that's the story. So, you know, if you have some thoughts on what you would like to see, let me know. As an aside, with the dummy battery power testing stuff, I can also potentially test some Nikon cameras that I may have access to through some friends. So there may be some, if there's interest in that, I may look at that too. I can also test older cameras like the 5D Mark IV. See, for example, how much actual how much actual power the GPS, the internal GPS compares, whatever. How much power consumes, that's the word I'm looking for. See how much power the internal GPS in the the 5D Mark IV, for example, consumes compared to having to use Bluetooth on the R5. So, as I said, short vlog, that's it. If you made it this far, thanks for watching. Like this, comment if you have some thoughts on what I'm asking question-wise. Consider subscribing if you're not subscribing. Yeah, blah, 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 all that kind of good stuff. Like I said, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.